Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the D-Pad Discourse. This edition will be for a week that started on August 24th, 2014. Alright, well, news came out that there is going to be another 3DS model, two 3DS models, matter of fact. The new 3DS, the regular new 3DS, and the 3DS LL. In Japan, that's what it's called. It's called a 3DS LL, but when it releases here, it's going to be called the it's probably more than likely going to be called the new 3DS XL here in America. But anyway, I was really surprised by this. First of all, it came out of nowhere. I was looking at my phone in the morning and then I saw the news. I'm like, really? Is this really happening? They're making another model of the 3DS. I mean, two models of the 3DS, new models of the 3DS, and I was just like, man, this is just crazy. The new 3DS has improved specs in comparison to the old 3DS, and this is on top of having better screens and a new design with new controls. And they basically incorporated the circle pad into this new 3DS design. So they have a analog stick that they call the C stick for the camera, and the stick is similar to what you would see on laptops. It's a finger nub, a pointing stick, and you can move the camera with that. And while it seems small, it seems like it would work if it works in a similar fashion to what they have on laptops. Now, also on top of this, they also have the new shoulder buttons on the back, the ZL button and the ZR button. And a nice touch to this was, at least with the regular new 3DS and not the 3DS, the extra large 3DS, new extra large 3DS, is the fact that the buttons, the face buttons, are colored in the same way as the Super Famicom or the PAL Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendos that came out outside of America. The controller for that console, that system, the controller had colored face buttons, and they pretty much brought those colors back to the buttons on this new 3DS model. And I think it's a nice touch. And overall, this new 3DS model is probably the best looking, in terms of design, the best looking portable device that Nintendo has made since the Game Boy Advance SP. It looks really nice and looks like it's built really solid. It looks pretty high quality. Now, I'm more likely going to get one because I like the fact that it looks better quality. But on top of this, news came out that there will be games made specifically for this new 3DS model, with one of those games being Xenoblade Chronicles, a remake of that for this new 3DS model. And it's crazy because with all the other 3DS models, you would think that they wouldn't want to split up the user base so much, but they're doing it again. And when I went online and see people discussing this fact, I saw people comparing this new 3DS to the Game Boy Color and the DSi. Now, in terms of the DSi, the DSi did have the camera, and it was an improvement over the original DS in terms of specs. But the games that were made exclusively for it were smaller games, games that weren't big, pretty much similar to what we play on these consoles now, the home consoles now, in terms of indie games, games that wouldn't be, that people wouldn't feel that disappointed that they're missing out on, really. So you had that. And then in terms of the Game Boy Color, when the Game Boy Color came out, I remember being a kid and seeing commercials for it on TV. When the Game Boy Color came out, Nintendo advertised that as pretty much a next generation Game Boy system, and the number of games that the Game Boy had, the Game Boy Color had, that could only work on the Game Boy Color were a pretty large number. And I'm pretty sure that the number of games that the Game Boy Color had that only worked on the Game Boy Color will be more than the number of games that this new 3DS will have that's made specifically for it. You know, games that only work for the new 3DS. So, and that's on top of, again, the Game Boy Color being viewed as the next generation Game Boy, even though the graphics were pretty much the same. You know, it's still 8-bit pretty much, but it was still viewed as the next generation Game Boy. And the fact that it could play older Game Boy titles was basically viewed as backwards compatibility. It wasn't, you know, viewed as, oh, this is just a new version of Game Boy, nothing more. It was viewed as the next generation Game Boy. So it's different in terms of that too. Again, the device looks solid. I'm gonna more likely get one, but I have to really question what Nintendo was thinking about in terms of the name. I mean, they've just been, as we saw with the Wii U and, you know, other examples too, they just don't get how important it is to give a product a good name. In terms of this new 3DS, it's like, you know, somebody goes to the store saying, hey, I want this new 3DS game. The clerk is gonna, you know, say, oh, do you mean you want a new game for your old 3DS or a new game for your new 3DS? And that could lead to a lot of confusion. And on top of that, say somebody has recently bought a 2DS, you know, say they bought a 2DS when it came out, when it was released, goes into the store to buy a game for the new 3DS, and then the clerk says, hey, you can't use this game for your 2DS. What's the 2DS owner saying? But hey, I thought that was the 2DS, I could play all 3DS games. And then the clerk says, oh, well, yeah, you can, but you can't play the new 3DS games. And then the person with the 2DS owner says, what do you mean? When I got the 2DS, I was able to play the new 3DS games that came out after I bought the 2DS. So the new 3DS games do work on my 2DS. And then the clerk says, well, by new 3DS games, I mean the games being made for a new 3DS system, and not new games being made for the old 3DS. I mean, I had to stop there because I had to not confuse myself. So I could only imagine how confusing it will be for people who don't follow up on gaming news all the time. It's just a mess, and I don't know what Nintendo was thinking in terms of the name. And also in terms of, you know, just this new portable device too. I mean, they already have enough problems with the Wii U, and it'll seem like, you know, they'll just put their attention on the Wii U at this point, but they're still, you know, trying to push their portable systems. I mean, which I kind of understand, since, you know, that's pretty much the only part of Nintendo that's doing well right now in terms of gaming devices. But still, it just seems way too much in such a short amount of time. I mean, 3DS came out in 2011, and there's already, I want to say, when you add in this new 3DS on top of the new 3DS XL, that this leads to, I want to say, 5 models of the 3DS in just 3 years. Because that's you got the original 3DS, the 3DS XL, the 2DS, and now, yeah, 2 models for the new 3DS. So that adds up to 5. And again, it's within 3 years, so that's crazy to me. How many models of the 3DS there are already, or at least are going to release soon. Now, this new model is going to come out in Japan this year, but it more likely won't be out in North America and Europe until sometime in 2015. So I am looking forward to getting the device, because, as I said before, the device looks really nice. But at the same time, I just don't understand what Nintendo was thinking in terms of releasing this. Alright, and in other Nintendo related news, Pokken has been revealed, and this is pretty much a Pokemon version of Tekken. A crazy combination, a combination that I never would have guessed would have happened before in terms of gaming, but it seems like it will be a pretty fun game, at least in terms of just the concept itself. You know, Tekken was Pokemon characters. I love Tekken, and in terms of Pokemon, if they mix Tekken-like gameplay in with the single-player experience of Pokemon, I think that will be a pretty enjoyable game. At least I would like it. And it seems like the game that Pokemon Stadium should have been. I remember back when I was a kid and my cousin spent the night, and he brought over his N64, and we went to Blockbuster to rent Pokemon Stadium, and this was like right at the time that Pokemon Stadium released, and we were really pumped to play this game. And when we played it, the game just wasn't anything that we expected it to be. We thought it would be more action-packed, but it was pretty slow in terms of gameplay, since if I remember correctly, it was a turn-based game. So this is what I would have wanted when I was a kid, you know, just fast action, actual fighting of Pokemon, you know, just get in there, fight, beat up Pokemon, get Pikachu beat up, Blastoise or Charmander. It just seems like it would be really fun, especially with the fast Tekken gameplay. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this game will look as more videos as well as more information gets stated about it. Alright, now in other news, Assassin's Creed Unity has been delayed. It originally was going to come out at the end of October, but now it's been pushed, and now it's coming out in November on the same day as Halo Master Chief Collection. So it's still coming out on a day that's going to be pretty, you know, packed with gaming, but at least now, you know, due to the 2-week delay, the game should be better. I don't know exactly why they had to delay the game for 2 weeks, but whatever it is, it seems like it will be worth it. And if the game gets a day 1 patch, then that will make sense in terms of the 2-week delay, since it doesn't take that long to make a day 1 patch. So the 2-week delay will make sense in terms of that, if that's the case, in terms of Assassin's Creed Unity. And in terms of this delay, I know that Insomniac has to be really happy, because Sunset Overdrive was originally going to be released on the same day as Assassin's Creed Unity in October, but now since Assassin's Creed Unity has been pushed, you know, that gives more breathing room for Sunset Overdrive. So I know Insomniac had to have been really happy with the news. But overall, Assassin's Creed Unity looks like a good game, and I'm interested in seeing how well the reception will be for it when it releases. Alright, and then off this edition of the D-Pad Discourse, Amazon bought Twitch, and it is funny because it seems like just a few weeks ago I made a video edition of the D-Pad Discourse talking about Google buying Twitch, but news came out that Amazon bought them for a little bit less than $1 billion. I believe it was $930 million. Now, I read online that the reason for this was because Twitch felt that Google was basically buying them due to them wanting a monopoly in terms of video services, and not really due to them wanting to improve the Twitch service, which makes sense since Google already has YouTube, and YouTube is the most popular site for videos basically. And when you combine that with Twitch, the most popular site for video game streaming, you know, that's a pretty big, you know, pretty big hold in terms of the video sharing sites. You know, just everything in terms of video sharing and video creation. You know, those two sites together, that's a pretty big chunk of internet video right there. So I definitely understand why you know, Twitch decided to do this. And again, it's going to be interesting to see where Twitch goes from here. You know, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, if Twitch will be even bigger than it is now. Alright, now it's another edition of the D-Pad Discourse. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A lot of things happened this past week, and maybe even more things will happen in this upcoming week. I guess we'll see soon. But hopefully you guys will come back next week for another edition of the D-Pad Discourse. And until then, Brad Davis saying goodbye, everybody.